Welcome back to the Legacy Podcast, guys. This week's episode has got Dan Weston. He's the founder of the massive blog, wealthygorilla.com. He's also got tons of traffic on Twitter, so you may find him there, or on his website where he's got loads of articles, quotes, and videos to actually inspire you and motivate you depending on whatever stage you are in your life. He's also an author and a speaker, travels the world, and has been featured on Success Magazine, Entrepreneur, and Huffington Post. Thanks so much for being here, Dan. Appreciate your time, man.
What's up, man? Thank you very much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
No problem at all, man. So just as we were saying before, just before we actually got into this, I actually stumbled across your website about a week ago now, I think. It's not even been that long. And your website, if I remember correctly, started a few years back. So for those long-time readers and for those people like me who've just found it, what was it that actually catapulted you to taking action to start a website like that?
So, to be honest with you, I've always been interested in the online thing ever since I was young. I used to do the buying and selling on eBay, the cliche buying and selling, eBay, Amazon, all of that kind of thing when I was 12, 13 years old. Just as kind of like a side job, you know. Obviously I was still in school, so to make a little bit of money on the side, I used to do that kind of thing. And as I grew up, I got more into the whole online entrepreneurship game, and I was looking at a bunch of different things, and blogging was one of the things that interested me at the time. But I fiddled around with it, and I kind of played around with WordPress for a little bit, but I never really found a niche that I wanted to go into. So I liked the idea of it, but I just couldn't figure out something that I was passionate enough about to actually start this blog or to start a website in. So when I was 18 years old, I fell in love with fitness. I always used to be a really skinny, really tall, skinny guy. And I fell in love with fitness, and that was kind of like my gateway to the rest of self-improvement. And so naturally, when you kind of develop a passion for something, nowadays you're researching articles on Google, you're looking at all different websites, stumbling upon tons of different websites. And I came across a few at the time, which I really liked. Such as Addicted to Success, which you said you've interviewed Joel, and I've met Joel before, and he's a great guy, down to earth. There's people like Lori from Tiny Buddha. I really enjoyed her website, but there was also a lot of websites that were kind of very like bland, very like not that appealing. Like the information was there, but it just wasn't packaged in an appealing, cool kind of way. So I ended up just putting two and two together. I started a site to kind of like document my journey as well as hopefully inspire other people and motivate other people. And because I was like so passionate about all of these things that I was writing about, it was really easy just to be consistent and just to keep publishing stuff and eventually build an audience. Like at the time, I don't know how many people have stuck around since the day I started it. There was only maybe 100 readers for the first couple of months. And you could probably, actually, there's a tool online, which I think you can find out what websites look like years back. But yeah, back when I started it, it was just an absolute mess. Like I'm looking back on it now and I'm thinking, what was this? But it was a start, and it just grew, and I just developed the design and the logo and the brand over time. So that's essentially how I got started and how I kind of paved the way to building this website, which now receives 3 million views a month. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing story, and I think the tool you're talking about, I think I'm familiar with it as well. Is it Wayback Machine?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Wayback Machine.
because I actually did a bit of Amazon affiliate marketing as well. So when you mentioned eBay and Amazon, I was just smiling because I was like, yeah, coming from the same place as you, man. So I actually did a bit of eBay, a cheeky bit of eBay in school because in I think I was like year 10 or 11, and I don't know where the urge for it came from, but I was just surfing online and I thought, hey, DVDs and games, man, they're cheap on here. So I go to school, find out what the demand is, go and buy it, and then sell it for a fiver extra, and then that's it. You just pocket the difference, you know. So it
That's
was
it.
a bit of a buzz when you're in school, when you're like 14, 15 years old. So,
It was, yeah,
but
massive.
um, so I mean, what was it? What was it that actually led you to that point of actually creating the website? I mean, was your character always the same as it is now? I mean, how have you changed as a person because of creating that site?
Well, I, so the website was created around about 6 months after I got into self-improvement. And at the time I was working full-time at a 9 to 5. Anybody who was working with me at that time in the company and got to know me will know that when I went in the door at 18, I was very shy. I was very insecure. I was very quiet. Um, I was scared of making mistakes, scared of being embarrassed by making mistakes, scared of trying new things. Like, I was scared of a lot of stuff. And essentially, after the kind of the high kicked in from these results that I was getting from fitness, I wanted to take that to new levels and to try and conquer some of these fears I had with confidence. So the website has been brilliant for doing that. I started it at 19. Within a year, I left my full-time job. That wasn't because I was making enough money to leave. That was because I had basically gained so much confidence from Wealthy Gorilla and from having people email me and saying that they loved what I was doing and wanting to interview me and things like this, that I actually decided I was going to leave just to go traveling. So I left my job at 20 years old, and people said that I went out the door much more confident, like a completely different person. I then went traveling, which was a completely new, like out of the comfort zone experience. And this was like, my first destination was Thailand. So I went there on my own, like no idea about that sort of thing, about a country like that across the other side of the world. And I just really enjoyed it. I was really scared, really nervous at first, but you just kind of, once you get into the habit of doing things that scare you, like I was doing so many different things every day on these travels that I just became so used to it and so kind of comfortable with the uncomfortable, I guess. And I did that for 7 months, and I came back naturally because I ran out of money. The business wasn't making me enough at that time. Like, the site was still fairly new. So I came back and I just, instead of getting another full-time job, I just worked on it for a whole year. And that's the main reason for the growth that you're now seeing. And then I went back out again last year, and I'm able to travel full-time now. So that's essentially the story and how I kind of got into it. And it's definitely, well, it's almost completely responsible for helping me transform as a person, helping me become more confident. Hugely, there's things I'm doing today that I would never have even thought about doing before I started Wealthy Gorilla and before I got into self-improvement. So it's a big difference.
Yeah, I can tell from the way you're speaking about it, like the confidence comes through in your words. But I'm interested to know because having done all of that and now getting to where you are now, people obviously see the images or the surface level stuff, which is traveling and enjoying yourself and being free and spending the money that you've got. But in that time, in between the loop of going up and down, going out of the country and coming back, what were some of the mental and sort of physical struggles you faced? Because obviously, running out of money is not a pleasant thing, and I'm sure you needed a place to stay. You needed money to survive for that year. So, just digging a bit deeper, what was that experience like? Because it's not as easy as just setting up a site and then, oh, I'm making money from advertising a year later and I quit.
Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted. There's a lot of work involved and there's a lot of ups and downs. And for me, I went from, I mean, bearing in mind, I started this young, right? So I still had a lot of time and a lot of options, and kind of this was like the best time to do it, really, for me to kind of experiment and to figure out what you actually want to do. So I went from having like a good car and a stable 9 to 5 job. But I was still living with my parents at the time when I had this full-time job. And then I sold all of that. I gave up the job. I sold the car to buy a one-way ticket. And I really enjoyed the travel side of things. But then obviously running out of money is, it is what it is. You know, you can't do much if you run out of money. So I obviously had to come back home. And I went from, you know, living on my own to coming back and living with my parents again. And the hardest part of that was simply refusing not to get another full-time job. I went from, you know, making this much money to making this much money. And I struggled. So there wasn't much I could do. Like, I didn't really go out of the house much because I was too busy working. I didn't get another car because I wasn't sure how long I was going to be back for. So I was driving my mum's car. There were a lot of restrictions that I placed on myself purely because in a year's time, I wanted to be somewhere else. And it was pretty much going backwards to go forwards again. That was how I saw it. It's like back one step, forward 2 steps. So yeah, it's kind of, it is mentally challenging. I know not a lot of people would want to do that. I mean, that's not necessarily the way you have to do it. It's just the way I chose to, purely because that I knew if I focused on this 100% of my energy, 100% of my time, I could get a lot further, a lot more quickly. So I had always set this date in mind of booking another ticket to back to Bali or somewhere in Asia. And I just always kept that in my mind, and I always just kept focusing 100% my energy on Wealthy Gorilla. And I knew that at some point it would be big enough for me to then leave again. And that's what I've done. So yeah, I'd say it is mentally tough. It is kind of a very roller coaster-ish ride. There's ups and downs, but you know, I'm thankful that I didn't just kind of throw in the towel and get another full-time job. I'm thankful that I actually kept at it and kept working. So here I am.
Yeah, seems like a definitely a crazy journey. So, I mean, whilst you were talking, I was just thinking about those people that I've spoken to who worry about the unknown, because I'm sure when you were in that situation where you decided for a year, I'm gonna focus on this job, sorry, on this website, and I'm not going to get a job. It's you're playing with the unknown because you don't know in that year what if you're in the same place. So I'm sure mental games start. You know, you had to battle those mental games a little bit, and some people find it unbearable because they can't see all the steps leading up to that success or crossing that finish line. So how did you mentally stabilize yourself, if you will, to actually see yourself to the finish line without allowing yourself to slip up and think, oh crap, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. Maybe it doesn't work. What's going to happen? And allowing sort of the fear to step in, because it's fear that always stops people, and that starts in the mind.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of times where I wanted to just throw the laptop against the wall or just kind of just throw in the towel, but I was always picturing the kind of like the end result. Like I'd the first 7 months of me traveling, that first period after I left my job, that was me seeing what life could be like. That was I was never making a full-time income off the business, but I was working every day like I was. So I was traveling and visiting these countries, but every day I would be in cafes, I would be meeting other nomads, collaborating with them. I'd be doing pretty much everything I'm doing now, even though I wasn't making the money. So it's kind of like faking it till you make it, I guess. But still, in a way, it's letting me experience what it could be like if I do actually achieve success with this. So when I ran out of money and I came home, I already had this image in my head or this experience of what life was going to be like when I made this happen. And that was so powerful. That was like the experience I had was so good that nothing was going to take that away from me. I don't care who tells me I can't do it. I don't care what kind of obstacles come in my way. I had already seen what I wanted life to be like, and therefore it was so much easier for me to just get on with it, just get the work done, and just make sure that I was going to be able to go back out. That really, that's all there was to it for me. It's very depressing when you, I didn't leave the house much, so it does get very, a little bit lonely. Like you kind of have to cut some of your social ties with old friends and not see them as much. You just kind of have to like get on with it, knuckle down, and sacrifice those things in order to have what you actually want in the next year or so. And so, yeah, for me, just keeping the image in my mind of what I'd already seen, what I've already experienced, that was what helped me to stick at it and keep at it for this long.
Yeah, so it's having the mental clarity of what it is exactly that you wanted to get out of it in the end that kept you sort of motivated to the end. So I think that the message there for people is just be clear as to what you want, because then when the hard times sort of come around, you can always refer back to, this is the reason I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for doing its sake, because it's hard to cut ties. It's hard to stay at home all the time. And I'm sure you've been ridiculed in some shape or form, whether it's parents or friends, about the fact that you're not sort of leaving the house all the time, because it's not exactly a typical normal thing to do as people go out to work every day like you did before as well. It's just the complete opposite of the routine, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And especially with like the kind of digital nomad online business type of deal, people, it depends where in the world you're from. And you're obviously from a big city, so it might be different. I'm not sure. I'm from the countryside. Now, in the countryside, people's minds and people's opinions are very different, especially when it comes to technology and when it comes to new types of business. So having an online business to people here, that's pretty crazy. Like that's not heard of. And traveling the world whilst you're doing it, that's even crazier. That's it really is rare in this area. So a lot of people didn't understand. They just don't understand. They just haven't kind of had this kind of experience before or seen these kinds of things being done before. So a lot of people ask me like, where is the money going to come from? Uh, when I kind of put down my occupation on certain forms, some people will laugh at me or like you get paid to do that, and I'm like, yeah, I get paid. but yeah, and even old friends, like I said, I cut social ties. That's mainly because a lot of my old friends just didn't understand either. And I can't blame them for that, but it makes me realize that I do need to go out and I do need to seek friendships with people who are doing the same thing and who have the similar mindset and the similar goals. And traveling is one of the biggest things that has helped me do that, because there are so many people in places like Bali and Thailand, Chiang Mai, wherever it is, that also do exactly the same thing. They're in these nomad groups. They have different types of businesses, and you can just grow so much faster when you're around people like that. So yeah, it's an interesting experience. I mean, I can't say I know anyone from here, from, within a 15-mile radius of where I'm from in England, that actually has an online business or travels the world. So I definitely had to kind of get to grips with that, and kind of just keep in my mind, like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. These people don't understand. That's fine. That's fine. I'm just going to get on with it, and I'll show them later on that this is how it can be done.
Yeah, I was just following what you were saying, and I think that being in London, actually, it doesn't make much of a difference, surprisingly. It's a big city. Maybe there's more people than there is in Ipswich that do this, but it's definitely still an issue, because it's difficult for a certain generation of people to catch on and understand where things are moving. Because when change comes about, everyone is very reluctant to change with the change, if you see what I mean. They like to sort of hold back in their old ways of doing things, routines and habits. So when someone like yourself, someone like me, with what I'm doing, comes along, they automatically think, well, how are you going to make money from that? You're not going into an office at 9 o'clock. Then automatically they think, well, because that's not the picture of the story, then it doesn't fit in anywhere. So
Yeah.
it takes pivots like yourself to change the course of where things are going and what's actually possible.
Yeah, and it'll become more common, within the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, it's the digital nomad specifically lifestyle has accelerated massively within the past couple of years, and more people are hearing about it. It kind of like the that phrase, the digital nomad description is a little bit, I don't know how to say it. It's a little bit misused, it's a little bit misunderstood. A lot of people think that we're just kind of like on the beach every day, just sipping coconuts or something. It's really not the case. A lot of people, they do kind of think that, like, they're living the beach life. They're going to the beach every day, making money, passive income, and all this kind of thing. For me, I know I live like 5 minutes from the beach, right? And I go there maybe once every couple of months. Um, yeah, it's not quite what you think it is, and I do encourage people to kind of look into it a little bit more, and yeah, it's becoming a lot more popular, and it will do within the next 3 to 5 years, definitely.
Hmm. I definitely see it catching on as well. There's a lot more blogs about it, a lot more videos, and especially adverts on YouTube as well about it, because there's so many more people breaking through. Some of them might be fake, some of them might be genuine. Who knows? But it's definitely something that is catching on as a lifestyle brand. But I mean, talking about the money that you make now, obviously you've moved away from the situation we discussed. What would you say are the sort of primary ways that you actually make money from that blog for people that are thinking of starting their own website? And then um, sort of spiraling from that, would you say the space of the internet as it is now, there's still room for people to start a website, or is it too late? Because that's obviously another thing that's playing in people's minds.
Yeah, so okay, so the main ways that I make money at the moment is mainly through advertising, of course, like display ads, banner ads that you see on the website, sponsorships. So I'll do a lot of kind of promotions or social media promotions, email list blasts, that kind of thing for other companies. And from time to time, I write the articles for them as well. And sometimes they'll send me some products, and to try and include them within some stuff that I'm writing about. So for example, I did a promotion for a company a while back, for I was working for an agency that were promoting Walmart. So they had a bunch of promotions on Walmart, and they were trying to get more awareness to them. And one of them was like a whey protein product, and they ended up sending me like 6 boxes of the stuff. And I basically just had to include my routines and write about my bodybuilding or fitness routines, and try out these products and just include them within the kind of the stuff that I was writing. So it's mainly advertising and sponsorships. I've done a few products in the past. I will definitely look to spend more time on that in the future, because that's definitely where the big money starts to come in. But for me, it's kind of like I've always tried to create them in the past, and then I've just gotten so sidetracked by audience and impact, like growing the audience. And I just always, for some reason, I just seem to come back to that, and I just love seeing the number of readers increase. So I'm sure at some point in time I'll come back to creating products. But yeah, it's mainly advertising, sponsorships, and affiliate marketing as well through Amazon, or there's a bunch of different networks like Share a Sale and Commission Junction, and there's a lot of different ways to make money with a blog. It really just depends on the niche you choose and traffic as well. I mean, it's a big help for me that I'm getting a lot of traffic. That's why I'm able to make so much money. But there's 2 ways of doing it. You can either go for the high traffic option that's not that specialized. It's very broad. Or you can go for the kind of lower traffic, really specialized niche, which has very relatable products to it. So, I mean, you see a bunch of people like making millions of revenue a year in niches, in crazy niches, like old school pipes, tobacco pipes, stuff like this. I've seen like a bunch of case studies. So yeah, essentially, I decided to go with the high traffic option because I like reaching as many people as possible. And that is what it is. It's self-development. It's trying to inspire and motivate people. So reaching more people is great for me. That just makes me feel like I've done my job properly. So yeah, so that's the sources of revenue. What was the other question?
Yeah, the second part was for someone that's thinking about starting out now, or just looking at the online space as a lucrative place to be. Is it too late, and how should they actually go about that, in your opinion?
Yeah, so it's never too late. We discussed a couple of minutes ago that it's still really rare for people to have even heard of this kind of thing. Definitely in certain parts of the world, in some not so much, but it's still really rare for people to even hear of this. So there is still a lot of room, and it really depends what kind of niche you want to go into and what your passion is on. In terms of blogging specifically, it's getting harder. It's getting a lot harder because, there's hundreds of millions of blogs created every year, right? And it's one of those things where everybody sees that it's worked and then jumps on the bandwagon. And then you get to this point, 2018, and there's a lot of people who their blogs are dead. They created them a couple of years back purely because they saw so many people jumping in on it and making money from it, and they decided that they could do it too. It's a very easy way to start a business. Blogging, you can make blogging free, right? You don't need a higher budget to start a blog. So that's why so many people do it. And I think it is possible. It's still, of course, it's still possible to start a blog today and make a lot of money from it. The difference is that you have to be committed for a long term, and you have to put a lot of work into it. I started in 2014. Now, there were still a lot of self-development blogs in 2014. Most of the big guys, like I mentioned before, Addicted to Success, you have Tiny Buddha, you have the Good Men Project, you have so many of these different self-development websites. They started in maybe 2009, 2010, 2011. When you get to 2014, everybody has already seen that this stuff works. And so they're jumping onto it. I did the exact same thing. I jumped onto it. I wish I could have started earlier, but unfortunately it wasn't my time. It wasn't meant to be. I got into self-development when I did. And the only difference is that you just have to work harder and stay in it for the long run, because after a year or so, most of the blogs die out. Like most of the ones that start at a particular time, the same time as me, they die out because they've seen that it's not getting any results, or they're not committed to going at it for more than a year before it kind of takes off, you know? So they give up, they die out, they're off. And that's where the people that did start a year or two ago start to thrive, right? Because the time has passed, they're getting more and more traffic. These other guys are dying off. Therefore, more people are coming to them. And that's essentially how it works. And 4 years later, putting a lot of time into it has really paid off. So anybody can come in at this point in time and start a blog, start an online business, and thrive from it. There's nothing stopping anyone. And the other thing is, like, it's getting more popular. So therefore, like, things like self-development are getting a lot more popular, a lot more talked about. And what that does is that brings new audiences in. So even though there are a lot more blogs and a lot more websites being started, there's a lot more people being interested in it. So it's not really being, you know, spread too thin. It's still, for the amount of people that are starting businesses in this area, there is also a higher demand because these other people are getting interested in it. So, I mean, it's never too late. You can, of course, you can start a blog, you can start an online business. It will be harder. And my advice is, as soon as something new comes out, try and get onto it first. See, a lot of these guys now who are really big, they found a platform that was developing and they jumped on it very quickly. Like when the Facebook first rolled out with business pages, a lot of guys started jumping in on it, and they were able to grow their business pages really quickly when engagement was really high. And now I'm sure you've seen the Facebook updates. They're now doing a thing where they're not showing business page feeds in the, or updates in the news feed or something like this. And of course, engagement is just going down. And then you have a new platform like Instagram come in. Everybody jumps in on Instagram. Now Instagram is kind of like, it's the same sort of thing as Facebook, just a few years later on. The engagement is dying as well. And sure enough, there's going to be another platform come in, and then there's going to be a bunch of new guys jump in on that first, and they're going to get ahead. So there's no like deadline for setting this up. There's always going to be something new come along where you can access this online world of making money.
It sounds like the whole message there was consistency, and I think that that goes for any platform or anything that you're doing. Because the one thing you've done is that you've stayed with it for 4 years, and that's why you've got to do what you're doing now. Especially for that year that we discussed earlier, where it was a lot harder than all the other years, and you had to just sort of plow through it. What drove you to actually because the beginning part, it sounds like you actually started because you were passionate and not because you wanted to make money. So was that the driving factor? Because all the people that you mentioned dropping off, I think it's safe to assume those guys started because, oh, this is a good way to make money, and a lot of people do that, including myself. Not with blogs, but the other businesses that I'd started. So I made an apps in the App Store in the early days when I was finishing off university and sort of transitioning into the world. Did eBay as well, which was very successful until I got my account got banned because I didn't have a license for what I was selling. And then there's a bunch of other stuff in between as well. But it was all, when I reflect back, it all started because I had the hunger to make money. And I was like, I want freedom, but then this is a good way to make money. So maybe this is the route to go because someone else is making money from it. So it was important for me to actually take a step back and reflect on what is it that I actually want, and is it actually even working? Because a lot of people are chasing it because they see the money, and it seems like you chased it because it came out of passion.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, naturally, if you're going after something purely because of money, you're not going to last because the reality is that it doesn't take a week or a month to get results. It takes quite a while. And unless you're passionate about something, you're not going to be bothered about putting in the effort. And, after a couple of months, you're going to say, hey, this isn't making me money. And I actually really kind of hate this. I'm not going to do it anymore. So for me, like all the stuff that I did up to Wealthy Gorilla was because I wanted to make money. And naturally, like I just said, those things didn't last very long. They lasted maybe a few months at a time. And then I moved on to something else. And that was purely because, yeah, I made like a little bit of money with it, but I just couldn't stick with it. I just didn't have a passion for it. So for me, it kind of like, I had always wanted to make money online. Ever since I was 12, 13, I decided that that was what I was going to do. I was going to make money online and move to another country. Um, and so I already had this goal, but nothing was clicking until I found a passion for self-improvement, and I combined that with the online game and building an online business, and of course traveling. And naturally, a niche like self-improvement, everything just kind of fits together. Like the whole travel thing fits perfectly with that. So yeah, like I say, nothing clicked until I found a passion for the thing that I wanted to make money in. And like I say, it took me quite a long time to actually make a living out of this. Um, it's longer than anyone would last if they just wanted to make money. That's for damn sure. If they just wanted to make money, they would be out a year, they'd be gone. Um, so it really, the passion is where you want to start with. And then you kind of want to see how you can monetize that passion. Um, so I already had this idea for online business, for blogging. I had already kind of found that thing, and then self-improvement was the passion. And there are certain parts of blogging I don't like. I'm not a big fan of writing. I wouldn't say I'm that big a fan of it, but because I write about self-improvement and because I love impacting people and seeing the audience rise, then I stick with it. And you kind of have to take a little bit of the good with the bad. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but yeah, the passion for sure. If you do want to make money, you have to start with the passion, and eventually it's gonna come. I mean, no one can say how long it's gonna take for you to make money online. No, there's no way of determining it. Like you said earlier, it's the unknown. You're stepping into the unknown. But for me, I was loving what I was doing, and nothing was going to take that away from me. So when I started making money from it, that was when I knew this was it for me.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's a big factor when you actually start making money from that thing, because then you realize whether it's something that you love to do, or if it was just about the money in the first place. And I'm sure now you've realized, even though it's been quite some time since you've started making money from it, that you want to actually still continue it and grow it. So it wasn't always about the money, because you started it when you didn't have anything, and you're still doing it now. So I think people can learn a big lesson from that. One last question I was going to ask you, just in relation to the website, before I move on from that, is for those who are a bit more techie and understand the technical terms of the internet. Did you actually? This is just more of a personal question, actually. But did you actually start off writing with SEO in mind, or did you just purely write because of passion and allow the audience to grow?
I just wrote mainly just because of passion. I've actually deleted all the old articles now within the first month or a couple of months or something like that, just because they were terrible. Um, I just wanted to get it out there. That's literally it. I just wanted to get it out into a physical form and approve upon that. So like I said before, like when I started the website, the design, everything was a complete mess. Go check it out after this and see what it looked like in 2014. Didn't look good, but yeah, I just started because of passion, and honestly, I didn't really know what I was doing with growing traffic or SEO. Um, my knowledge was next to nothing at the time, but naturally you are curious and you want to learn more, and so the writing for passion quickly became combined with new knowledge for SEO, and now 4 years later, that knowledge is pretty good. Like it's helped me a lot, so it's grown a lot for sure. But yeah, the articles in the beginning, they were very short, um, just kind of like just on random topics, like not really focused on a particular keyword, and they weren't written very well. And yeah, you just kind of like, honestly, you after a few months, you start figuring out what works and what doesn't. And I figured out essentially, I think it was like maybe my 20th or 30th article um, started to get a lot of traffic. And that was the first real article which got a lot of traffic. You can still see it on the website today. It's the title was the 10 best motivational speakers in the world. And that is still to date, that's about in the top 20 of the best performing articles. And that's when I kind of knew it was kind of like starting to click, like what worked and what didn't, and what the kind of best practices were. So you just get used to it. You just have to kind of like analyze what's working after a while, and then you know where you're at and you know how to move forward.
Sounds like trial and error over time, which you can't really get away from. I think you've got to jump in with both feet, and make the decision to jump in, and then figure it out as you're going on. You can't have all the steps laid out in front of you before you move, otherwise you won't really be taking any steps. So, I mean, now that you've moved past all of that, and it's probably safe to say you're in a much better place than you were. What is it that sort of inspires you and keeps you motivated now? Because you're in a very different headspace now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all relative. Like it's for me, it's like failing is a bit of an addiction. Um, I always that's pretty much where I get my motivation from. Like if I fail at something, then I really want to prove that I can do it and prove that I can kind of beat it. So for me, when the traffic increases and when I start getting more readers, that's like a new baseline. And then my next motivation is how can I double this, or how can I triple this, or whatever it is. So I kind of like, as I went along, I started with a goal of 1,000 visitors, like sessions a month, 1,000 readers a month. And after I hit that, I went to 1,000 readers a day. And for me at the time, this was crazy. Like 1,000 readers a day, I'm never going to achieve this. And I hit it. And once I hit it, I knew that I could keep going. And then it was like 100,000 visitors a month. And I still have these goals much, much higher up than what I am at now. Like the next goal is a million readers a month, and then it's going to be 10 million, and it's just going to keep going. You know, it never really stops. And for me, that's the motivation, is that I can always just keep growing as a person and as a business, and Wealthy Gorilla can keep growing and can keep reaching more people. So like I say, I'm passionate about this stuff. The money doesn't really matter to me. I'm just glad that I can survive and do this at the same time. So I'm always gonna have that motivation to reach more people, and I just keep setting myself goals, and they're normally about reach and about readers. And once I hit those, I set more, and once I hit those, I set more, and I have a funny addiction with numbers and seeing them go up. So yeah, really, that's what keeps me going, man.
Awesome, man. So I think people are interested on the lighter side of things. What's a day in the life of Dan when you're sort of traveling? Say, for example, you're in Bali or any of the travels that you do.
A day in the life. So for me, a day in the life, depending on what day of the week it is, is normally I will go to a cafe or in the morning, or I will go to, they have a place in Bali called Fins, which is, Fins is like a membership club, or like it's like a club, and they have a gym, and they have a bar and a restaurant and a business center and all this kind of thing. So you can go there, you can meet a bunch of people who are also members, and they're working. I'll go there. I'll be working on either writing some articles or doing some social media marketing, answering emails. Really, like my daily, like my work kind of tasks really change depending on what my kind of goal is at the current time. So right now I'm kind of switching advertising networks and playing around with that kind of thing. For the most part, it's writing and editing content. Sometimes it'll be looking at new ways of growth or new plugins or features that can help elevate me. And other times it's really trying to focus on growing the social media channels. So work-wise, that's basically what I focus on, and it will vary a lot. And I'll normally take like a week block to focus on one specific thing and just hammer it all out in 1 week. And my work hours are pretty flexible. Like it really depends on what time of the day I feel like working. And most of the time I just work in the morning, just kind of like early morning. I just bash it out, and then 2 or 3 I'll hit the gym. Then maybe a little bit of work when I get back, and then maybe I'll go out with a couple of friends, go to their villa, have a few drinks, and then go to a couple of clubs on the old 125 mopeds, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But you know, the great thing about being a nomad is that you can have a certain type of day one day and a completely different day the next. Like it can be very diverse and very different, and there's a bunch of other stuff that comes with that, like a bunch of staying motivated and staying productive and not getting sidetracked and staying in your habits of work. But that's a completely different subject. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun way to make money and to live.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I think you painted a nice picture there for everyone. But yeah, no, the last thing you said there is quite interesting actually, because the thing is, everyone thinks that you're probably living a dream life, as you were saying earlier, like sipping coconut and just chilling on the beach. And thing is, every level has its new devil, as they say, right? So now that you've reached it doesn't mean your life's perfect. You've got problems that only come when you have that level of lifestyle. So there's always problems. It just depends where you are and what sort of life you're living. And each section of life has its own baggage or things that or difficulties that come with it. So as you said, without diving too deep into that, because that's, as you said, a whole different topic, it's a lot of mental struggle to keep yourself like working, because it's like, I'm having so much fun, I've got to pull myself back. There's no one telling you what time to start and stop.
Yeah, plenty of different struggles that come with being a nomad, as well as the highs. And especially since it's not like the done thing, there are a lot of other complications that come with it, from banking to getting yourself in deep trouble in a different country on the other side of the world. But we could do a completely different, we could do a whole nother podcast episode on this. I've actually done one on my own podcast with a guy called Evan Teague. And we did a whole podcast on like the kind of like the downside of being a digital nomad. And that might be a good thing to kind of check out.
Yeah, I'll put the link for that in the show notes for sure, man. People can check that out and see I'm sure you'll cover what the flip side of life is like on there that people don't really experience unless they're actually in that position. But yeah, no, so to wrap things up, I always ask everyone 3 questions, and it's interesting what people say because it always varies. But the first one is, if you were to go back to your 18-year-old self with all the knowledge and with all the experience you've got now, what would you tell him if you were to tell him anything?
To my young self.
Yeah, to your 18-year-old self.
My 18-year-old self. That's a really great question. I don't know. It's kind of like, it's a little bit tough for me because I started doing this so young, you know. I started doing this at 19 anyway. So I guess for me and for probably a lot of other people might kind of want to do the same thing that I do, I would just say kind of like really figure out what you want to do, experiment, try a lot of new things. And because really that's the only way you're going to figure out what you want to do in life, right, is experimentation. And 18, 19, 20, those are the best years to do it because you don't have a lot of responsibilities. You don't have a lot of payments, a mortgage. You're not, you know, deep into a long-term career. So really it's the best time to just experiment, try new things, figure out what you want to do in life, figure out what you love, and having the confidence to go for that and to not settle for something less, to not settle for something easier.
Sure. No, that's awesome advice, man. So the second thing was, if you could write something to your great grandchildren and it could be put into a time capsule, even though you don't like writing, what would you write to them if you could leave them any message?
Dude, I would write pretty much what I just said before. Basically just just doing what you love, just having the confidence and the belief in yourself to go out in the world and to do what you want to do, and to not let other people's opinions and other people's own experiences influence how you're going to live your life. So you've got to have your own mind, have your own thoughts, have your own opinions and your own beliefs, and you've got to stick with those and stay with them no matter what people are kind of screaming in your ear. So for me, that's what I would write in that. I would say, yeah, just believe in yourself and just don't let people kind of determine how you're going to live your life. Live your life on your own terms.
Powerful message, man. I mean, your perception of the world is what dictates what's possible. So having your own perception allows you to draw your own boundaries, man. So yeah, no, I don't think there's a better message than that. So the last one, just to wrap things up, Dan is 90 years old now. You're looking back at your life. What would you want your legacy to be? You've started with Wealthy Gorilla. You've been through this journey. I mean, taking into consideration where you see yourself going, what would you want the message of your life to be left with when you leave the world?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question because number one, like, people often say like you've got to set long-term goals, right? Like 5, 10-year goals. For me, I don't set any of that because I really don't know what I want to do in that time, like if I set a goal like that, it could completely change within the time that I get to it. So my 90-year-old self, my legacy at the moment, I mean, this could completely change over time, and it will change over time. But for now, what I would say is that I simply just want to have some kind of positive impact and just kind of prove that something like this can be done and just reach as many people as possible and just have a positive influence. That's all I can really say. And as I go on, this definition may become a little bit clearer. I know it's in the direction of positive influence and a big impact, and yeah, just helping as many people as possible, man.
Awesome, man. So that wraps up that episode. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak, man. I appreciate your time, and I think everyone's going to enjoy this one.
No worries, man. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure sharing this with your audience, and I can't wait to listen to it once the podcast goes live.
Definitely, man. All right. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thank you very much.